The Rift awakens. The galaxy had not known war in over 2 centuries. The Solarion alliance had grown complacent in its peace, its fleets scattered more as symbols of order than necessities of survival. Yet in the uncharted fringe of the Vera Nebula, something stirred, something no one had seen before. Commander Kale Draven stood at the viewport of the Aegis Dawn, his flagship cruiser, gazing into the shifting colors of the nebula. Waves of violet and indigo rippled against the darkness, disturbed by a single anomaly at the center. A tear. It looked like a wound in space itself, a jagged rift, its edges glowing crimson as though bleeding into the void. Around it, gravitational distortions tugged at drifting asteroids, pulling them into the scar and crushing them into nothingness. "Telemetry is unstable, Commander," reported Lieutenant Sarah Vale, her fingers dancing across the console. "Our instruments can't parse the energy signature. It doesn't match any known stellar phenomenon." Kale's jaw tightened. "And the missing patrol?" She shook her head. "No signals. No debris. It's as if the Orion Spire never existed." The commander turned back to the rift. Reports had been coming in for weeks, stations gone dark, mining colonies silent, entire patrols disappearing without distress calls. At first, High Command dismissed them as pirate activity or communications failures. But Kale had seen war. He'd felt the silence of death before, and this was no accident. "Launch probes," he ordered. "I want a full scan. If this thing is eating fleets, I want to know why." The probes streaked forward, small glimmers of light swallowed by the rift. Data streamed back in erratic pulses, spikes of energy, patterns too structured to be natural, almost deliberate. Then came the sound. A low vibration at first, rattling the ship's hull like a distant storm. But as it grew louder, the vibration became a resonance, an alien frequency carried through space. It wasn't random static. It was layered, rhythmic. Almost insect-like. The crew froze. Even seasoned veterans shifted uneasily at their stations. "Commander," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. "It sounds alive." Before Kale could respond, the rift expanded. Crimson light flared outward as if the universe itself was tearing wider. Something massive pushed through the breach. "Contacts," shouted Ensign Ryan. Multiple signatures emerging. Kale's heart sank as the first of them appeared, ships, if they could be called that. They weren't metal or forged constructs, but twisted, chitinous leviathans, their bodies pulsating with organic glow. Each moved with eerie synchronicity, wings of dark matter energy propelling them forward. The probes disintegrated instantly, consumed by swarms of smaller creatures spilling from the leviathans, thousands of them, darting like locusts across the void. "My gods," Sarah whispered. "It's a swarm. The Void Swarm." Kale had no name for them yet, but instinct screamed louder than science. He snapped into action. "All batteries, fire at will." The Aegis Dawn's cannons roared, streaks of plasma lancing across the void. Other Solarion ships joined, filling the nebula with fire. The first swarm creatures shattered under the barrage, their bodies erupting into shards of blackened ichor. But the Leviathans pressed forward, unrelenting, adapting. "Impact in 30 seconds. Hold formation." Kale barked. "Target their wings, cripple their movement." The fleet obeyed. Plasma tore through one Leviathan's wing, sending it spiraling into the rift. For a moment, hope flared. Then the creature split apart mid-collapse, releasing hundreds more spawn from within its carcass. "Adaptive birthing," Sarah said, horrified. "They use death as a weapon." Kale clenched his fists. These weren't just raiders or beasts. This was strategy, biological warfare perfected by something ancient, intelligent, and merciless. The swarm crashed into the fleet. Ships vanished in blinding flashes as hulls were ripped apart. One Solarion frigate screamed across comms before going silent, its last transmission drowned out by alien screeches. "Commander!" Ryan cried. "We can't hold them." Kale's mind raced. The Alliance needed to know. The galaxy had to be warned. But to do that, someone had to survive. "Signal the fleet," he ordered, his voice cold steel. "Fall back. Get word to High Command. We can't win this fight." The Aegis Dawn swung hard, engines burning as they pushed against the swarm. Kale watched as ship after ship was dragged down, their sacrifice buying precious seconds. He refused to look away. Every death carved itself into his memory, fuel for the war he knew was coming. As the cruiser broke free of the nebula, Kale looked back one final time. The rift pulsed, wider than before, vomiting forth an endless tide of void-born horrors. And behind them, deeper within the scar, something far larger moved, its silhouette eclipsing stars. The swarm wasn't just invading. The rift was a gateway. Kale turned from the viewport, his expression grim. "Set course for Solarion Prime. Prepare a full transmission to High Command." "Yes, Commander." He stood in silence as the stars streaked past, the hum of the engine steady beneath his feet. But the sound of the swarm lingered in his ears, the insectal rhythm, the voice of the void. The galaxy had grown soft in peace. It would not survive what was coming. And Kale Draven swore, with every breath, that he would not let the darkness consume them all. The Rift Wars had begun. Rise of the Swarm. The council chamber of Solarion Prime glittered with marble and starlight, a relic of centuries of peace. Yet for the first time in living memory, its halls shook with anger, fear, and denial. Commander Kale Draven stood at the center of the amphitheater, the hollow display of the rift spinning above him. Around him, representatives of dozens of worlds argued in overlapping shouts, too loud to be orderly, too desperate to be dignified. "You expect us to believe this fantasy?" one delegate sneered, jabbing a finger toward the projection of the swarm. "Organic ships, born from some cosmic scar? Nonsense. Your fleet stumbled into pirates and panicked." Kale's voice was low but sharp. "Pirates don't consume entire stations. Pirates don't spawn more warships out of their dead." The hollow replayed the final transmissions from the Vera Nebula, screams over comms, ships torn apart, the endless tide pouring from the rift. The chamber fell into uneasy silence. "This is no raid," Kale continued. "This is war. And it's only the beginning. The first incursions." Within weeks, his warning proved true. Frontier systems began going dark one by one. The colony at Vera 4 sent a desperate SOS before silence swallowed it. Mining fleets reported shadows in the void, vast leviathans drifting silently before descending in swarms. Even heavily fortified outposts fell, their defenses stripped bare in hours. Every report told the same story: the swarm adapted. Missiles that worked in the first strike failed in the next. Energy weapons burned holes in their chitin, only for the creatures to shed the damaged flesh and regrow stronger. Some adapted to Solarion plasma, their hides becoming reflective shells that spat the fire back. Entire strategies collapsed in days. Kale was called back into the fight. The Aegis Dawn led a defense fleet at Lyro Station, one of the largest fuel depots in the Outer Rim. "Multiple contacts inbound," reported Sarah Vale, her voice steady despite the tension. "Dozens of leviathans, and thousands of smaller signatures." Kale's stomach tightened. He had expected another wave, but this was an army. "Form a perimeter," Kale ordered. "Draw them in. Make every shot count." The swarm hit like a tidal wave. Fighters darted through space like black arrows, crashing into Solarion ships with suicidal precision. Leviathans tore into cruisers with mandible-like claws, rending metal as if it were paper. For every creature destroyed, another seemed to emerge from the rift. Lyro Station itself shuddered as boarding swarms breached its hull, flooding corridors with skittering horrors. Civilians screamed over open channels, begging for rescue. Kale gritted his teeth. "All wings, cover the station. Buy them time for evacuation." The Aegis Dawn weaved through the chaos, cannons blazing. Kale's eyes flicked across the battle map, watching his fleet dwindle ship by ship. But then, something caught his attention. The swarm wasn't just attacking randomly. Their movements were precise, coordinated. Like a hive. Sarah, Kale barked. Overlay their flight paths. The display shifted, showing the swarm's advance as a pattern, spiraling inward, converging on the heart of the station. They're not trying to destroy it, Kale realized aloud. They're trying to harvest it. A chilling thought settled in his mind. The swarm didn't fight for conquest. They fought for assimilation, absorbing resources, energy, and even life itself into their hive. And the rift was their endless supply line. The hidden intelligence. That night, after the bloody retreat from Lyros, Kale convened with his officers aboard the Aegis Dawn. Survivors had been evaluated, but Lyros Station was gone, stripped bare and left as a hollow shell drifting in silence. The swarm learns too fast, Sarah said grimly, nursing a wound across her arm. Every time we counter, they evolve. If this keeps up, no fleet will be able to hold them back. Which means we can't fight them like a war, Kale replied. We need to understand them. We need to know who commands them. The room fell silent. They don't move like animals, Kale continued. They move like soldiers. They have purpose. Coordination. A will. Rhine, the ensign who had barely survived the first encounter, spoke up. Then there's a leader. Kale nodded. Or something worse. A hive mind. An intelligence directing them from the rift. For a moment, no one spoke. The idea was too monstrous, too alien. But deep down, they knew it was true. Into the swarm. High Command, desperate and fracturing under political pressure, approved a daring mission. Kale and the Aegis Dawn would strike deep into swarm territory, not to destroy, but to uncover intelligence. The plan was reckless. Few expected them to return. The cruisers slipped past broken colonies and wrecked fleets, the stars littered with the bones of war. Everywhere, they saw evidence of the swarm spreading. Planets stripped of their atmospheres. Asteroid belts hollowed like eggshells. Carcasses of ships bound together into grotesque hives. Finally, at the edge of the rift itself, Kale saw it. A structure, not natural, not random. Floating within the breach was a colossal formation of living matter, a hive tower the size of a moon. Tendrils of energy extended into the rift, feeding it, expanding it. Around it swarmed leviathans and spawn, endless in number. Sarah's voice trembled. That thing is building the rift larger. Kale's blood went cold. The swarm wasn't just spilling into the galaxy. They were expanding the gateway. Then came the signal. Through the comms, through the hull, through their very minds. A sound, low, rhythmic, layered. Not noise. Not static. A voice. Every crew member froze, clutching their heads as the alien resonance invaded their thoughts. Images flashed, worlds burning, stars consumed, civilizations swallowed whole. The vision carried one message, clear and undeniable. Assimilation is inevitable. Kale staggered, gripping the console. His vision blurred, but his will held fast. No, he hissed under his breath. Not while I still breathe. The breaking point. The swarm descended. Dozens of leviathans surged toward the Aegis Dawn, their screeches piercing through the void. Evasive maneuvers. Kale barked. Transmit everything we've recorded to Solarion Prime. If we don't make it out, they need to know what we've seen. The cruiser blazed through the rift's shadow, weaving between leviathans, cannons blazing. The crew fought with desperate fury, knowing they could not win, only survive long enough to deliver the warning. The swarm pressed harder, their attacks relentless. Shields collapsed. Hull plates tore. The Aegis Dawn groaned under the weight of the assault. But then, an opening. Now! Kale shouted. Punch us through. Engines roared, and the cruiser burst past the encirclement, leaving trails of fire and blood behind. As the rift faded into the distance, Kale looked back one last time. The swarm was rising. Faster than anyone could comprehend. stronger than any single fleet could resist. And somewhere within that hive tower lurked the intelligence that sought to consume the galaxy. The war was no longer coming. It had already begun. The last stand at the rift. The galaxy had run out of time. Every world that fell to the swarm was another nail in the coffin of civilization. Colonies stripped to bone. Fleets devoured. Refugees scattered like ash across the stars. The rift grew larger with every passing day, its crimson scar visible even from settled worlds light years away. At Solarion Prime, the Alliance had one choice left: fight or perish. And so the largest armada in recorded history gathered in orbit above the capital world. Hundreds of ships from every corner of the Alliance, sleek Solarion battleships, massive Varian carriers, even the older cruisers pulled from retirement. They formed a wall of steel and firepower around the flagship Aegis Dawn. Commander Kale Draven stood at the bridge's center, his eyes locked on the holomap of the rift. He had no illusions. This would not be a battle for victory, it would be a battle for survival. All ships, prepare for jump, Kale ordered. His voice carried steady resolve, though every nerve in his body screamed otherwise. Today, we don't fight for territory. We don't fight for pride. We fight for every life still free in this galaxy. The armada jumped. The swarm unleashed. They emerged into chaos. The rift tower loomed before them, a grotesque moan of pulsing flesh and tendrils, anchoring itself across reality. From its core poured the void swarm, millions of spawn streaking through the void, escorted by leviathans larger than dreadnoughts. Their numbers blotted out the stars. The galaxy's greatest fleet charged headlong into the abyss. Fire everything! Kale roared. The void lit up. Plasma beams, missile barrages, railgun slugs, all weapons unleashed in a blinding storm. Leviathans exploded into burning husks. Spawn were shredded by flak storms. The Alliance had teeth, and for a moment, the tide seemed to falter. But the swarm adapted. Plasma-resistant hides. Reflective carapaces. New mutations blooming mid-battle as if evolution itself bent to their will. For every Leviathan that fell, two more emerged from the rift. Kale gritted his teeth. Keep pushing. Drive them back from the tower. The Aegis Dawn carved a path through the swarm, its guns blazing, but already the Alliance was buckling. Carriers were overrun. Battleships split apart. Entire wings vanished beneath clouds of screeching spawn. The rift thundered with alien resonance, the same voice Kale had heard before, layered, endless, commanding. It wasn't merely an invasion. It was judgment. The heart of the rift. Kale knew brute force wouldn't end this. The swarm couldn't be outnumbered. Couldn't be outgunned. Their strength came from the rift itself. Sarah, Kale called, turning to his lieutenant. Is the energy buildup stable enough? Her face paled as she checked the readings. Barely. If we channel the rift's energy into the core, it won't just collapse the gateway. It'll detonate half the sector. Rhine, bloodied but alive at the weapons station, swallowed hard. That would wipe us out too. Kale's gaze hardened. Better us than the entire galaxy. The crew stared at him, silent. Not a single protest came. They knew. They had seen the swarm's hunger. If it wasn't stopped here, there would be no end. The final push. All ships, this is Commander Draven, Kale said over the open channel. His voice carried through the battle, reaching thousands of soldiers in their dying struggle. The swarm cannot be beaten by fire alone. The rift is their lifeline. We're going to sever it. The Aegis Dawn will make the run. Cover us with everything you have. No hesitation. No pleas. Just grim acceptance. The armada shifted. Cruisers threw themselves in front of Leviathans, shielding the flagship. Fighters dove into suicide runs to clear the path. Battleships formed walls of fire to hold back the tide. Every ship, every soul, gave everything to buy Kale a chance. The Aegis Dawn surged forward, engines screaming as they pierced through the swarm. Tendrils from the rift tower lashed out, wrapping around ships and crushing them like toys. Kale's vessel blasted through, its cannons tearing a burning scar toward the tower's heart. Then it appeared, an eye. Vast, luminous, buried deep in the living moon. And Kale felt it. The intelligence behind the swarm. It spoke without words, pressing into his mind with alien certainty. You cannot stop us. You are dust. You are food. You will be one with the void. Kale spat the words through gritted teeth. Not today. Sacrifice. Core overload sequence, Kale ordered. Sarah's hands trembled, but she obeyed. Alarms blared across the bridge as the Aegis Dawn's engines reconfigured, pulling raw rift energy into the ship's heart. The cruiser shook violently, its hull glowing with unstable power. The swarm sensed the danger. Leviathans broke from the battle, swarming toward the flagship in desperation. All batteries, hold them off. Kale shouted. The Aegis Dawn fired everything, every gun, every torpedo, every last ounce of fury. Still they came, claws raking across the hull, bodies bursting against the shields. On the comms, Kale heard the Alliance commanders rallying. Protect the Dawn. Give them time. For the galaxy. One by one, their signals fell silent, consumed in the storm. The rift's eye glared brighter, the swarm shrieking in unison. But Kale stood tall at the command deck, the hum of the core building to a crescendo. Sarah looked at him, her eyes wet but steady. Kale, it's been an honor. He gave her the faintest smile. See you on the other side. The core ignited. Collapse. The Aegis Dawn vanished in a blinding explosion of white fire. The rift screamed, its tendrils writhing as the unstable energy fed back into itself. Crimson light folded inward, crushing the swarm, tearing Leviathans apart, collapsing the gateway in a storm of reality-shattering fury. Every ship near the breach was consumed, Alliance and Swarm alike. The rift shuddered, shrank, and finally imploded, leaving only silence. The galaxy exhaled. Epilogue. Weeks later, survivors drifted back to their shattered fleets. Burned worlds began to rebuild. For the first time in months, the stars were free of the swarm. On Solarion Prime, Kale Draven's name was spoken in reverence. Statues were raised. Songs were sung. He was remembered as the man who faced the void and refused to bow. But in the deepest black beyond known space, something stirred. A whisper. A flicker of crimson. The rift was gone. But the void was eternal. And one day, it would hunger again.